Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I thought today might be a good day to do a writer tag because I just wanted to do something a bit more fun and it would give you more of an insight into who I am, because I understand I still haven't done an introduction video as to who I am and what whips I'm currently working on. So I just thought, let me just do this writing tag. It will be a lot of fun and it will be a great way to sort of reach out to people in the writing community and the poetry community and just sort of get an idea of your writing rituals and the things that inspire you to write and whatnot. So I thought it would be fun to do one. I haven't seen the original video for where this particular writing tag comes from, but I understand a author to writer by the name of Mandy Lynn was the one who had originally put the tag up. So I'll put the video down below of Samantha Munson's video, which is the one that I actually came across and I felt inspired to do this particular tag, in the description. And then if I manage to find Mandy Lynn's original video, I'll also put that down below as well. So I tag everybody. Obviously I'm not tagged by anybody, but I tag everyone who happens to come across this video. I highly encourage you guys to do it. It's just a bit of fun. So continue watching. And I do apologize for any amount of cheese that may come about as a result of my cheesiness. I've also just forgot to add that I'll be putting up the questions up on the screen. From what I understand, the tag is actually formulated of questions that are to do with the letters of the word writer, so W-R-I-T-E-R. Like I said, I'll put the questions up on the screen, so if you want to take part, you can. I'm pretty flexible, I can do it anywhere, but I do prefer to sit at a desk or at a table, because I can sit with my back up straight and I'll have my laptop in front of me or my notebook, and I'm able just to sit and just type away without too many distractions. The only problem that I do have is that I've got really poorly feet at the moment. So every so often when I'm writing and I start feeling pain in my heels, I do have to then stop, stand up, and then I'll try and dictate through my phone or straight onto the laptop what it is that I'm in the middle of trying to write. Otherwise I will just type through the pain. But yeah, I'm pretty traditional. I just like sitting up straight so I can actually focus and then just continue producing what I can. I do, yes. I have to make sure I have tea. I have to make sure I've got my writing journals laid out on the table next to me, because I admit it, I am quite the plotter. And I need to make sure that any information or sheets of paper that I've got that I've written here and there, sort of willy-nilly in the middle of the night, at work, whatever, I've got them all there with me on my table. Otherwise I'll probably forget once I get into the flow of things. I also have to have my research there purely because when I'm doing world building, I like the idea of working with the limitations that I've set for myself within the worlds that I'm actually writing and setting all these novels in. The only other thing that I can think of as far as writing rituals is concerned, other than announcing that I'm going to be writing so everyone can just leave me alone, is playlists. I do have set playlists for each of my novels. I'm working on 4 books at the moment, so I've got a playlist for each one on Spotify, and it's just a good way for me to sort of get in the mood of the story that I'm writing. For example, one of the urban fantasies that I'm writing at the moment, I'm now at a crux within the writing process where I feel like my story might not be fully urban fantasy, or it will share elements of urban fantasy and horror. So I need to have dark sort of music, from electro to classical music, because of the certain feelings I want to be able to convey when the characters happen to be playing out their particular scenes. So I want people to feel like either electrified by the internet aspects or really kind of horrified by all the horror aspects and the death that happens across my pages. So yeah, those are mine so far. Ooh, I think when inspiration stops, because I could be in the middle of like this really cool scene that I hadn't really thought about, and I'm just typing it up and just seeing where the characters take me. And I'm typing and I'm typing and I'm typing, and then suddenly I get to a point where it's like, okay, where do I go now? And then I'm completely lost. And then that just throws me for the rest of the week. I can't function. I think about it, I dream about it, I try and rework so many ways to try and figure out how I'm going to end this particular scene and where I'm going to try and fit it within the novel's sort of context and the linearity of it all. But it's when inspiration just randomly stops. The other thing that I also find, it's not necessarily when I'm writing, it's more a case of when I'm not writing. When I'm busy doing something else, like I'm out at work, or I'm hanging out with my boyfriend, or I'm doing something, and then suddenly inspiration will just hit me and I've got no access to pens or papers and my phone is dying. So I can't even make notes in my phone. Those are the only times when I'm irritated the most. When inspiration just comes and goes whenever she feels like it. It's annoying. I think it's a toss-up between two things. It's the world building aspect. I'm really into world building right now. I guess I kind of have been since I was a little girl. When I first started dabbling within the world of writing and just coming up with your own stories. You kind of tend to do that if you happen to be a lonely child for a really long time. You tend to just come up with your own stories and your own worlds and your own rules within the worlds. And it's quite a fascinating aspect of writing a novel now. Yeah, just world building at the moment, but on the same level or in the same vein, writing minute scenes that sound really good when I read them out loud. I find that if I don't read anything that I've written out loud, it's just mediocre and I don't really care too much about it, because in the back of my mind I'm like, well, I'm going to come back to it and edit it later on. But when I'm writing a particular scene that's just, there's nothing holding me back, no constraints, and I can just write freely, and I'm just so into the characters and I'm so into what's happening. And then I'm able to sort of bring that whole sequence to a really good ending or a really good pause. I'm then able to sort of sit back, read it out loud, and just be thoroughly excited by what I've just written. I have to do the whole like audiobook thing when I'm writing, because otherwise it doesn't sort of come to life for me. Like the words just feel really flat on the page. So if it sounds good out loud, as if I've written some sort of form of like script writing or something, then I know it's going to be a consistent piece that I can keep within the novel, and it will probably be very painful when it comes to editing and I might have to cut that bit out. But while I've written it, it's a lot of fun, it sounds good, and it makes me feel really positive about that particular scene and obviously the rest of the story. I think more than anything, it's the notion of being able to permeate, research, and analyze story. I'm an English literature graduate, class of 2016, DMU, whoop whoop. And it's the notion that whatever I write, I love the idea of knowing that at some point someone in the future is going to enjoy just permeating the pages as much as I loved analysing and permeating stories when I was at university and way before then. I like the idea that a book is more than just the words written on a page and then maybe the top layer of the story and what the story happens to mean. I like to go beneath that and pull out if there's any political aspects to it, any racial aspects or othering aspects to it. Is there more about how the story was set up and structured? Was it inspired by poetry, or what kind of psychoanalysis can I pull from it, or other forms of critical theory? So those are the most important aspects to me when I'm reading a story, and when I'm writing, I like to make sure that I add those other layers and dimensions to my own stories, because I want to know and I want to see what other readers and other writers consider or think of when they're reading any of my scenes or any of my stories. It's quite an exciting thing. I think that's also what's kind of helped me as far as not really fearing what the critics are going to say about my works, because one thing I definitely remember from when I was at university, it was a case of when you're discussing literature, theoretically speaking, no answer is wrong or no theory is wrong. Obviously, in some cases, that is most definitely a very base sort of idea. But the main idea and the main focus of that is that just because you happen to like one particular book doesn't necessarily mean that everybody else is going to like that book. And ultimately, all you're discussing is the work itself, not so much the author. Unless, of course, you know, there's some reason to discuss the author and then their works, and then trying to decide whether you're going to separate the works from the author or not. But that's the most essential aspect to me, being able to add layers and dimension to my own stories so that, like me, the readers can also permeate and then have their own ideas come about because of what I've written. I do want to apologise if this video no longer sounds very fun and it's becoming kind of academic. I do apologise for that. But for reflection, again, another one of those, I don't know if you'd call it an old adage or anything, but most writers will say that really cheesy line, which is, write what you know. And that is something that I also happen to stand very firm to. I am an immigrant. I am a woman of colour. I've got British, Caribbean, European heritage, ancestry, DNA. All of those things are the reasons why I create the characters that I do. All of those particular aspects are the reasons why I'm able to world build and feel inspired by the places that I've lived in, and then put them all into the novels that I'm writing. So, for example, the immigrant aspect, there's one story that I've been working on, which I rarely talk about because I've been working on it for a very, very, very long time. And I've got a funny feeling it may not see the light of day, at least within the next decade. But it is what I would regard as an immigrant story. I want to be able to convey the feelings of what it means to be an immigrant. But on the same level, also sort of exploring the feelings of what it means to be in love with the place that you happen to be moving to. So it's not necessarily about the people that you meet and the relationships that you build up with them and all the experiences that you have with them, but also the aspect of the city or the place or the country itself and your relationship with it. So those are sort of some of the elements that I've put into that particular immigration novel. There's also another weird aspect, which is why I have a pen name. Actually, I have two pen names, but one of my main pen names that a lot of people on the internet have known me by for the past 10 or so years is known as, my name's Psycholalan, and that pen name is associated with my spirituality. Believe it or not, I am a practicing occultist. I like to call myself more of an esotericist, or just, you know, your everyday witch. I've been practicing witchcraft and the occult and esotericism and most forms of mysticism since I was like 11 years old. So that's also a big reason why I love urban fantasies, and I like the idea of having fantasy settings based on places that I've actually been to, where everybody happens to be magical in some way, rather than having a magical person who has to hide all their powers in the real world. I decided I would try and set my characters in a world that I would prefer to be in myself, which is everyone's kind of magical, everyone's unique, everyone's got their own paths, and no one judges you unless they're the villain. So those are kind of things that I like to add to my novels. I know that sounds kind of generic, but bearing in mind, I am a woman of colour, like I said, so most of my characters will be people of colour who happen to be friends with all kinds of people from all over the world. And I know that's going to be one of the biggest struggles when it comes to selling my books anyway. Most people aren't very comfortable with the idea of having a protagonist who's a person of colour or any of that sort of stuff, like with the status quo. I want to disrupt the status quo because I myself disrupt the status quo in my own little way. So those are kind of some of the reflections that I add. But anyway, I'm going to stop talking because I'm just going to keep blabbering. But yeah, that brings us to the end of the video itself. So thank you very much for watching. Like I said at the beginning, I tag everybody. I would love to see what responses you guys have in your own videos if you decide to do your own tags. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So I'm gonna go. Bye.